Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Over Quota. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review if you haven't already. And like always, the J. David Group, which is my company, is sponsoring this podcast. We help today's go-to market teams build the next generation of unicorns. This podcast is also being sponsored by Lego. For all you sales leaders out there, if you ever watched a role play recording by one of your reps that you wished you could add notes to at the very moment in the role play that needed redirection, well, that's just one of the things that Lego can do. Not only does it allow you to record your best content for practice, collaboration, and feedback, but it gives you a way to organize all of your best content in one place, so it's easily accessible to help improve sales performance for everyone. Email me, Webb, with two B's, at thejdavidgroup.com so that I could personally take great care of you or introduce you to someone who could take great care of you. Now, my guest today is Dwight Lawson, head of sales at Ethena, Ethena, which provides compliance training for modern teens. And we'll ask him about that in a moment. Dwight's been with multiple startups where he's been at the forefront of companies as they've grown and transformed. He's also, as I've learned, an avid world traveler and a consumer of all kinds of content except podcasts, which is interesting. I recently found out. However, I'm happy to have him on, and maybe we can change his mind and open his mind up to podcasts like Over Quota. Dwight, welcome to Over Quota.
Appreciate it.
Let's just start there. Tell me a little bit about your I don't want to say the word reluctance, but just you haven't evolved to coming onto podcasts. What's that all about?
I honestly think it's from me being an Android lover, and when podcasts first came out, it was just on Apple. But I have zero excuse now because you can find a podcast on any platform you want. But it's weird. I watch a lot of shows. I have a TV show list with over 230 shows now over the past 6 or 7 years. And then I have an unlimited subscription for movies with Regal. And I used to, I don't anymore, but I used to even make music playlists for friends like once every month. And for whatever reason, the pandemic got me not listening to music as much. But I've gotten into books and again, more reason you would think I like podcasts. I got into audiobooks, and I've probably read 20 books so far this year. And for whatever reason, podcast has not answered the fray.
Well, let me employ you to make Over Quota the first podcast that you start listening to. So don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. All right.
For sure.
Absolutely. Oh man, there's so many questions that I have even within that, but let me just pause for a second and back up and give people an understanding of your role at Ethena and, the value proposition of Ethena. What are you guys, what problem are you guys solving right now?
Yeah. Perhaps you went through harassment prevention training or compliance training before where you dreaded going to it. You almost fell asleep through it. You had moments because it was boring, it was dated, it was corny and such. And so what we're doing is solving that problem where the training is actually good, it's relevant, you're seeing a mixed media of content that you're receiving. So similar to kind of what I just talked about, you're seeing video, you're seeing audio, you're seeing text, you're even seeing comic and graphic arts, right? And then what else ends up being an issue for a lot of companies, especially VP of people or people ops teams or legal and compliance teams, is that the tracking and adjusting of training tends to be a huge pain point. So if Jay is in Connecticut and moves to New York, we now have to adjust the training for them. And what companies do a lot now is they will manually do this. The great thing with Ethena, we actually have a patent pending approach where it actually recognizes that Jay is no longer in Connecticut. Jay is now in New York. We need to adjust the training that goes to him. And we do that automatically, which saves a lot of time so they can go back to doing the things that they want to do, not the things that they have to do and dread, right? So really taking a lot of dread, both on the admin side and the learner side off the table.
That's fantastic. And full disclosure, Ethena happens to be a client of the J. David Group, and what you just said there is something that now we can share with our potential, prospective candidates, because you, as well as we can say it and do it the way that you just presented it, was fantastic. So thank you for that. So I mentioned that you've been with a number of startups, right? And now, of course, Ethena is the next startup that you're with. Tell me, like, why? What was attractive to Ethena to you about Ethena when you got there? And then what have you been asked to do as the head of sales? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I was actually in final rounds with 3 other companies when a recruiter for an investor of Athena reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, I think you'd be great for this role. Please apply here." And I was pretty confident in myself. I was I'm not about to apply, but I'm happy to find a conversation. And simply put, and I even do this on the recruiting side. I want to make sure there's at least a genuine fit up front before either of us put in any further work, right? Because I don't want to waste their time, and obviously don't want to waste my own time. And so end up having a conversation with our CEO, Roxanne, and did my research going into the call and was like, okay, pretty impressive background. This at least warrants a conversation. And in the call, candidly, I never thought I'd be selling harassment prevention and compliance training. Didn't sound as sexy to me to sell. But especially with everything going on in the world, from Me Too to Black Lives Matter to Stop Asian Hate and what have you, one of the things that really stood out is that not only is the training better in terms of relevant and engaging, but the cherry on top, that everything we do is built to be inclusive. And I've started several ERGs at previous startups, and that really stood out to me because not only is this something that is going to be a need for companies because they have to do it, right? But it also can be something that aligns with their culture and can also, further creating an inclusive culture and inclusive companies, which, being Black in tech and Black in tech sales, you don't see that as often. So that was really encouraging for me because not only is the product great, but we can practice what we preach.
That's fantastic. And then I want to get into that a little bit there, because you and I, before we hit record and talked previously, you mentioned authenticity and how important that is to you. And I want to get into that a little bit. But before you touch there, define for me the vision that they had for you, or they have for you in that role. What are some of the big things that you're tackling right now to accomplish that vision?
Yeah, I mean, I came on board as the first sales hire, so it was closed revenue. I think we were a little over well over 100K in ARR, and it was literally just like, let's get these deals in, right? And so it was great because at the end of the year, there was a law going into effect in California that really pushed a lot of these companies that needed to do it but hadn't yet to actually get it done. And for whatever reason, we got really lucky to be, if they look up, compliance training for startups or culture and compliance, it actually, goes to Ethena, and that just naturally has happened. So first, closing revenue, let's get $1 million in ARR, right? Then let's build out the team, right? We want to triple, double, right? And so we hired an enterprise AE. She reports directly to our CEO. I brought on 2 mid-market account executives and then 4 SDRs to really supercharge efforts in the mid-market space, right? And that's where we see where we're going to have the most consistent revenue, right? Enterprise, longer deals, it will ebb and flow. Scaling businesses until we put engineering and product resources to it, it will come in organically. But that mid-market, those companies that are smart enough that they need to have something, but maybe not as mature that they are building things themselves, or they have a provider already and such, but they need someone. And again, going back to everything going on in the world, they want to make sure it aligns to their culture, right? They want to make sure that when people actually go through the training, the company, it's shown that the company cares about this, not that they're just checking the box. And so that's where we've really been able to be successful, finding a lot of tech companies that are culture forward here based in the United States. So long story short, revenue, and then build out the team to, again, double, triple.
Double, triple. Okay, got it. Thank you. Is it harder to triple after you've already doubled twice, or is it easier to triple first and then double? Right? That's the question. You mentioned authenticity, right? And I want to talk to you about that as it pertains to DEI a little bit, but tell me why authenticity, just as a general principle for you, is so important. It sounds like a dumb question because everybody should feel that way, but I know it was one of those things that was top of mind for you. So tell me a little bit about your thought process there.
Yeah, I think it's something that is kind of valuable, both internal and external. So something like adaptability or coachability necessarily is valuable internal, not necessarily external, right? But authenticity is valuable because internal, people believe you're genuine, right? People see that you are your real self, right? So first, you're able to be your real self. That's one. And then second, you are being your real self, right? It's not political, it's not this or that, it's just being who you are. And then that's going to make sure that the team isn't, stricken by, toxic cultures and angst and competitiveness, right? So first, internal, right? And that's how you have great feedback, both giving and receiving. Then external. If I'm authentic in the conversation, I don't seem like a salesperson because I'm coming with real research and value for them. It doesn't matter if I'm a salesperson or it's a cold call. I'm coming with value for you. I'm coming with value for you, for people that sit in your seat, in your industry, in your, country, right? If you will, right? Break it down even more. And so I think that's where it goes back to credibility. And that comes from being authentic. And I actually even wrote a blog post on it called Keeping It 100, being authentic within sales, right? And that goes, threefold, both working within the team, doing recruiting. And that's why, again, I always have that level set conversation because I want to make sure it's not only a great fit for them, but for me, right? So it's a bit of, let me sell you on Ethena, but also I'd love to make sure that this is going to be fruitful for both of us.
I remember when I first got into this business recruiting over 15 years ago, and my employer during the interview process made it clear to me that the people that I would be engaging and selling to weren't used to seeing black faces in their offices, right? Let's just put it bluntly. And how was I going to handle that? How was I going to respond to that? And I told him, my life's perspective and my experience to that point. But I will tell you that after Barack Obama so this is back 2006 is when I got hired there. So after Barack Obama became president in 2008, and LinkedIn had already been around for a couple of years, it was the first time I actually put my face, like my picture, on LinkedIn, right? Because I was fearful because I was doing a lot of cold calling, building a business, and I was fearful that people weren't necessarily going to want to engage with me just because I was black, right? So as it pertains to authenticity, right? In that particular instance, for me, I wasn't being authentic because I wasn't showing who I was, literally, right? You talk about internal, right? I just wasn't showing it, and I was afraid that my internal beliefs would affect my external, right? In a way. So what advice do you have for, especially even young black men and women who are trying to get into tech, right? Maybe not even in tech at this point, where they hear, Dwight Lawson and Jay Webb say to be authentic, but maybe they're reticent in a way because their view of authenticity might be different from somebody else's, and they don't want to necessarily hurt their chances, I guess, if you will. What's your thought around that?
Candidly, I don't know if I can curse, but F that. and the reason being is as I've matured in age and what have you, the kind of bigger things that I focus on is authentic and being who I am, right? No matter what place I'm at. And that can be at work, with family, professionally, with my fraternity, etc. And so I strive for that. So I always tell people, look, at the end of the day, you want to be professional, right? But be yourself. And if you can't find a place that, wants you for who you are, that's not the right place, right? I'm one of those people that I never think anything is wrong as long as you're doing the right things. It's not a setback. It's not a mishap. It's not an accident. Did you do the right things? Did you put in the right work? What are we talking about then?
Yep. That's fantastic. Now, is this something that has evolved in you, or is it something that you know, in other words, when I say evolved, in other words, being comfortable, literally, I guess, in your own skin? And if so, tell me how that evolution has come about. And if not, you know, where did it come from? I guess, you know.
Yeah, I feel like I was 70% there in high school. And context, grew up in suburban high school. There was probably, I don't know, 15%, 20% Black folks within the company, within the school. So I'd say college, freshman year, it was me being my authentic self, which was great because you know, people say this all the time, but college is where you know you fully find who you are. You find like lifelong friends and such. But I'd say freshman year was okay. I could be myself, and it does not matter, right? And that it's funny because UC, University of Cincinnati, where I went to undergrad, isn't a lot of Black folks there. I think if there was 46,000 students when I was there, it was like 6% or so that were Black, but very tight knit community. And that was where it was like, okay, great. And not only was I being myself, I had 4 internships in college, right? At places like JP Morgan, P&G, GE, et cetera, right? So that also, you know, further emboldened me, right? I don't need to be anyone else. And then I'd say the cherry on top was when I was at Yelp. I remember the first, let's say, few months I was doing average. And I definitely had a manager where I couldn't do like discounts and shortcuts and stuff like others may have been able to do, which was good and so the right things in me. But I remember leaving from work with a friend and my manager for a coworker's going away party. And a friend called me and was asking for advice. And I'm very straightforward and blunt, some may say. And I'm like, okay, do this, don't do that. Oh, wait, actually, let's break this down. Boom, 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 boom. Give me a call back if you do this. Bye. And I get off the phone and my manager is like, where in the world has that been? and I was like, well, that's how I am naturally. He was like, I don't care what we've been telling you to do that.
Right.
Like be yourself. And that's really where my, sales career took off, is being my authentic self, right? Not trying to be what they trained me to be, learning from that and then applying that to who I am.
You bring up, you mentioned your manager there, which begs another question about mentorship. How much have mentors played a role in your experience and your success so far? And then as a head of sales, tell me a little bit about your communication and the way that you're coaching and leading your team.
Yeah, I've had some mentors, obviously, well, not obviously, for context, when I say some and obviously, there is a myth maybe, or a thought out there that says there's not a lot of mentors for folks of color out there, especially in tech, maybe even more specifically, especially in tech sales. I'll say a myth, but it's true. But one of the things, I've had several. So first, that manager at Yelp has become a mentor and someone to lean on. And then I've had a few others throughout my career. So I'd say somewhat. I'd love for it to be more. Now, especially where I am, there's not too many, in a sense, of folks that are either at my position or have been. So now when I talk to people like Simon Tekel or what have you, those are great folks to really get poured into and learn as much as possible, because they've been in it, and they do look like me, right? Or he does look like me, to be specific. And ironically, he's in Columbus, Ohio, where I'm from. And then to your second question, it's funny because I'm very straightforward and blunt, but one of the things that I really honed in on with the team is being empathetic, right? And really learning how to talk with different folks on the team, right? Maybe someone is like, hey, give it to me straightforward, tell me in a group setting, I don't care. Whereas another person is like, please tell me by myself. Turn off the video while you do it. it's just that adjustment, right? And it's actually been pretty smooth, and I think it's been smooth because I've seen so much good out there, and quite honestly, I've seen so much bad out there. And I was one of those people where I was the top salesperson, so I never really wanted to be a manager because it's like they make less. But as I've again gotten more seasoned in the game, the bigger thing that I care about is impact. And especially being able to pour in folks that look like me, but at the end of the day, folks that are new into tech sales. How can I help them get to where I am and pass me? And so that's what's really excited me about bringing on the team, first with the AEs and then with the SDRs. So we actually meet several times in the week. One of those sessions are focused around coaching and a particular situation, call, or a thing to strategize around. Then we also meet around feedback, right? Being able to not only give feedback and receive it, right? I'm one of those people where I've learned, I believe I'm right in every situation until you tell me I'm wrong. Whereas I didn't know this, but a lot of people out there believe they are wrong in every situation until someone tells them they're right. And that was like very very understanding, because for me, until you tell me something, I'll just be right. Whereas other people will actually, hey, was I right about this? And I was like, well, I wouldn't have said anything unless I felt I was. But again, that's that adjustment with different people.
Where does that come from? You say, I believe I'm right about everything first until you tell me I'm different. Where does that come from? Where does that, I don't know if you want to call it confidence or, self-worth. Give me a sense of where that comes from.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to say it naturally comes from me, but I'd say it really comes from my community, right? From my mom, my dad, my family and such, friends and everything. But I also am pretty naturally like this. And it goes back to what I mentioned earlier. When you're doing the right things, you're putting in the right work. Why wouldn't you be confident about it? Right? If you're putting in 50% of the work, or you're not doing the right work, totally understand why you're not confident. But I will never understand if you're putting in the work, you did the work, right? You did it the right way. And when I say the right way, let me break that down. Anyone can work harder or work hard. Anyone can. I actually care less if someone says that they're a hard worker. What I care about is a smart worker. Right? You can make 1,000 calls. What does that do? But if you make 100 calls and they're targeted and you call them at the right time, isn't that way more impactful? So that's what I really care about.
When you talk about going back to the big picture of tripling and then triple, double, so to speak, right?
Triple, double.
Yeah, triple, double. When you are coaching and mentoring your teams, and you mentioned coaching and feedback and all that, is it a situation where you're in the deals with them and sort of leading by example, and then eventually, letting them on their own? Like, what is how are you able to affect change or affect the deals and improve performance when you're not actually the person, to your point earlier about being the top account executive? Like, what does that look like tactically for you?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I don't want to be too overbearing. So I don't want to lead the call and then have them join or what have you. I'd actually rather them lead the call and I hop in when I need to, right? Where I need to maybe gear the conversation back, or I need to give some anecdotes here or there. So I am very much a person, prove me right or prove me right. And what I mean by that is, the data says this, so prove me right by doing this. Or if you'd like to try something else out as well, great, let's do it. And you're going to prove me right by either being successful anyway, or it doesn't work and you're going to prove me right again. So prove me right or prove me right, right? Because at the end of the day, someone's going to be right. I don't care if it's me. I truly don't. But I want to make sure we find the right thing.
When you look at right now your team, you have one account executive. You mentioned 4 BDRs, right?
Two account executives.
Account executive and 4 BDRs.
Correct.
Can you look out, say, a year from now, right? What's your team look like? And then how are you tactically getting there? In other words, obviously recruiting the right people. What else are you looking at from within your organization to say, this is, in order for us to do what we need to do, here are the big initiatives that we need to tackle in order to make that happen?
Yeah, I mean, ideally we triple within the next say 6-7 months or what have you. And then from there, it's going to be growing, right? So growing on the AE front as well as the SDR front to then meet those double numbers, right? Back to the triple, double. So I'd say I'd break it down first in 6 months. So 6 months, hit that number. Then in a year from now, the team has grown probably at very least doubled to then, meet these more aggressive targets. But also we've expanded kind of what we're offering, either in the courses that we've offered or expanding into different industries. So right now our ICP is, tech companies in the United States that are culture forward, and to be even more specific, in these 6 states that required compliance trainings or what have you. Now, in general, companies, because of everything we've talked about, what's going on in the world, they want to get this in place because, again, it shows that they actually care and this is important.
Makes sense. And talk about efficiency. You mentioned efficiency as being one of the things that is important to you. What does that mean for you when you say efficient? Tell me what efficiency means to you.
Yeah, I mean, at one point I wanted to either create an app or start a consultancy where I literally digest people's lives and break out how I can bring more time back in their day. Because me, I will multitask anything. And I will stop multitasking if I feel that I can't, accomplish both. But I literally do 2 things at once throughout the day. And that's just how naturally I am, right? So first, it's your time and breaking that down. So doing a time analysis, which I encourage everyone to do it either for a week, do it for 2 weeks, and break down where you put your time in. And then let's see what your goals are, right? Maybe it's working out more. Maybe it's putting more time in to work on a side project. Well, I can easily slot those times in for you because at the end of the day, most people aren't efficient with their time. I'm not, perfect efficient with mine, but I try to be as efficient as possible. And that goes back to even using a calendar, right? Breaking every little thing down in your calendar. And that's even oh man, I don't eat sometimes unless unless my calendar says eat, right? And so it just goes back to anyone can work harder, but the people that can work smart or work smarter, right? That's where you're really going next level, because you're finding the ways to put more time back in your day to put more impact in the day.
What does that actually look like, your time analysis method? In other words, are you literally just writing down everything that you do during a day and how much time you spend on it? And is it a tool, or are you just writing it down like pen and paper or in some Google Doc? What does that look like?
Yeah, so what we've done is do it both ways. It depends on the rep and their technical efficiencies, if you will. So it may just be jotting it down every day.
Okay.
What I then will do is put it in a pie chart or a graph and see, okay, hey, you actually see that 60% of your time is on internal meetings. How can we have less internal meetings, right? You see that you're spending a lot of time on admin work. What are you doing in that admin work? Let's break that down, right? Going to even emails, right? With SDRs and AEs, they want to make a perfect email. They take 20 minutes for it. No one's ever going to read the email that they just took 20 minutes for.
Right. Okay. So with that, is there if you're looking at that pie chart that you just mentioned, right? What should it look like then? If I'm a rep on your team, right, or you're coaching me, and maybe even going back, I don't know if you were using this when you were individual contributor as well, but what should the activity breakdown look like for you? What's the biggest slice?
It depends on what your goal is at the end of the day, right? It's everything you do, you should back into it.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So if your goal as an SDR is 8 meetings, okay, well, let's back into what 8 meetings will take from me. right? If your goal is 50K as an AE, let's back into what 50K will take from me. How many leads does that need to be in my name? How many emails need to go out? How many social selling videos need to go out? How many calls do I need to make a day at the right time, right? So all of that goes into play.
And then, so with that, right, with those numbers and goals that you just mentioned, then do you reverse engineer that time analysis and say, okay, well, if I need to make, a certain amount of number of calls or demos, whatever it might be, then I need to look back at my time analysis and say, okay, I need to remove this 20 minutes right here for an email. Can't be 20 anymore. Has to be 2. Or, I need to use, some templates maybe that we've used and sort of adjust them and those types of things. So now you have more time to do higher value activities, right? As opposed to some of the stuff that's not really making you, getting you any closer to your goal. Is that fair to say?
Exactly.
Yep. And had you used that throughout your career? Like, where did that come into play for you? The time analysis and really being careful about it.
Yeah, so funny, it's kind of like two things put together. So time analysis and like a monthly plan builder, which I got from KD and Pavilion's Frontline Manager School.
Okay.
So the time analysis I've been doing probably the past 7-8 years.
Mm-hmm.
Why I started doing it is because I got old, and what I mean by that is my memory wasn't as good as I thought it was.
Okay.
I was like, I was going to do this, and I was like, I don't remember. And so now, everything is from the calendar, and I realized how much I was doing, things that I could be more efficient on.
Mm-hmm.
So then Frontline Manager School, KD brought us basically a monthly plan builder template, and it was for like SDRs and AEs where you could basically say, this is what I've done for the month or quarter or what have you. What we did is, to your point, reverse engineered it to then see both ways. Okay, if I do this and move this lever here by 2%, this is what I could see. And also, this is the results that come from this type of work, right? So the combination of those.
Is it, how often do you do it? In other words, you said for 7 or 8 years, but is it something that you are literally doing maybe every day or weekly, even to say, okay, how have I been spending my time? What is it? Tell me.
Yeah, I probably do it quarterly to adjust. And then with the monthly plan builder thing, I do that monthly with the team.
Got it. And so is it safe to assume that with your team or others that you've mentored, you recommend the same cadence? In other words, look at a time analysis on a quarterly basis, given wherever your goals are. And that's okay. Very good.
Yeah, I mean, and that goes back to look, you should be adjusting everything quarterly, if not monthly, right? Because, for example, sorry, my dog just did something. But anywho, for example, a year ago, when I'm saying this, 3 years ago, social selling videos were not as popular, right? And then before you knew it, everything was like, oh man, that video was really nice. I actually should reply to them.
Makes sense. Okay, good. So let me zoom back out a little bit here because I'm just so curious and working with you and talking with you a couple of times. You've been in startups now for a while, right? Tell me.
10 years.
10 years. Give me a sense of what about startups to you or excite you? You feel challenged or rewarding? Give me a sense of what you feel about them.
Yeah, simply put, impact and opportunity. I have been at startups pretty early. So Yelp, I think we started our hiring class was the first hiring class right after the IPO. So it was I think before it was too big, if you will. And then there were 40 people in the New York office. When I left, there were 600. And then JustWorks, I was somewhere between 30 and 40. Daily Pay was somewhere between 20 and 30. And then Ethena 8. And it was funny because one of the things that I was very excited about with startups is being very early in, but I was always that second tier of early, which is great. Don't get me wrong. It's been rewarding But no lie, that first tier gets a lot of love when it comes to sales from what I've seen.
In equity too. Yeah.
Exactly, right? And so that was something that really, excited me about Ethena. But again, going back to impact and opportunity, impact will happen regardless, right? But opportunity, and when I say opportunity, more opportunity. And so that's where I really loved Ethena, right? I was think employee number 8. So there was so much impact to be had, but it was huge opportunity, right? And so that's what excites me the most when it comes to startups: impact and opportunity.
When you say impact, let's say 5 years from now, right? You move on from Ethena, right? Let's just say maybe because there was an exit and you move on to another startup and whatnot. What kind of an impact would you want to have had on Ethena, right? If you look back, what would that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think simply put, I think there's 2 ways to look at it: the short impact and the long-term impact. And so the short impact is like, as soon as you leave, everyone's just like, oh my God. Right. And honestly, I felt that wherever I've left, which is really cool. And it's like, man, you were the best salesperson, or all these like notes and such or whatever, where people are just like sad that you're gone. So that's like the short-term impact, right? That I'd love to see. But the long-term impact is that my name is still kind of brought up in the conversations, right? And where I go with that is, hey, I could be long gone 5 years from now, or what have you. And they're like, oh, well, back when Dwight was here, we did this. And I think that's actually, you know what I mean? Those type of conversations. But also, if that's the case, then the impact will be there in terms of the company. Because if there's an exit or we leave, I've impacted not only the growth of the sales team, but the culture. And I impacted the company overall by my relationships within it, right? I'm not the type that I say hi and bye and leave. You're going to know and hear Dwight, if you will, within a company.
Impact maybe on the market as well, right? The marketplace, in terms of all the things that you're helping companies do as well, right?
For sure. And I think secondly, the impact that I've brought within the like sales and Black in sales community. And that goes to kind of recruiting work and people that we bring in, such as we've partnered not only with folks like yourself, but like us in technology on the SDR front. Which has been, really rewarding so far. But that impact too would be how the hell my team's done, right? Ideally, they're killing it. We have directors, we have AEs, we have folks in even other positions within the company are killing within tech as well. So that would actually matter the most to me is that impact.
Yeah, and we've talked about this several times offline, because I know that we're trying to find people for you, people of color, some more Black folks to on your team as well. And one of the challenges for us, candidly, has been finding people that have come from not only software sales, but then also a startup, right? And I've tried to, as a good headhunter should, try to open up the strike zone a bit so that we can try to find more candidates. And one of the things I mentioned to you is that there is a thought out there, and a past podcast guests who you mentioned, Simon, as being one of them, have said that we'll hire for skill, if you will, or I'll even say talent and life experiences before we'll hire for a particular skill. Like, okay, this person's been in a startup, this person sold this kind of technology. And I know that diversity is important to you in bringing folks to making that impact. But you really want people that have been in tech startups, which means the pool is much smaller, obviously, as a result, right? Talk to me about that, what your thought process is around that, where you want to make an impact on one end, but on the other end, it's harder to make the impact given the kinds of talent that you need to bring in.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to where we are as a company. For example, we say, Simon, they're a little further than us as a company in terms of size, the sales team, et cetera. So there is the ability to take more time, have more training, get them, more upskilled on these things. Whereas with us, we're triple, double right now. And so it's that balance, right? But at the end of the day, I think what's been great is finding folks that maybe they don't have tech startup experience, but they have startup experience, right? Or maybe they don't have startup experience, but they've been in the tech world, right? So there's those nuances in it, if you will, that may find value. But at the end of the day, we're 40 people, right? Things change weekly, monthly. So bringing someone that maybe has not been in an environment where change happens that drastically, that isn't necessarily beneficial for them or us, right? Mm-hmm. And then on the flip side, if someone necessarily hasn't been in the tech space, there's different vernacular that we have to then upskill on and such, right? That's easier, I will say. Mm-hmm. But it's just, again, these are additional trainings or upskilling that has to be done versus someone that maybe you can plug and play.
What other characteristics would you say? Or you talk about, startup environment and being adaptable, I guess, if you will, and being adaptable where, things aren't certain things because there's always going to be change. What are the other characteristics, the soft skills, I guess, that you look for? I guess generally for salespeople, but then also within a startup.
Yeah, I mean, you called one out, adaptability, coachability. One we've talked about already, authenticity, and then one that is kind of unique because it's two is achievement orientation / conscientiousness. Okay. What I mean by that is I want folks that are goal oriented. But again, we are focused on triple, double. And at the end of the day, especially right now, if you can do your job and do it well and bring on quality, not just quantity, right? I don't care if you bring them on if they don't retain. I want folks that are like, man, Ethena was a great experience from the sales side of things to the CS side of things, right? And so that's what's important to me. And so if we're able to do that, then we're going to kill our number, right? We're going to be able to hit the goals and hit what we want to hit as a company.
Yeah. So part of your, recruiting process then is you're assessing candidates is that's really important, which is that whole conscientiousness, right? Because it's one thing to achieve, okay, I've brought on a certain amount of logos, I've done this amount of business, but if it's falling out on the other end, right? In other words, it's causing churn where all of a sudden the customers that you have aren't customers that are going to stay, then what does that do for the growth and viability of Ethena in the long term if those are the kinds of people that you're bringing on, right? So you need to be able to screen for that in addition to some of the other stuff that you mentioned.
Absolutely.
Yep, that makes sense. Obviously in my world, there's two schools of thought or two kinds of candidates. There's the kind of candidate that is open to a startup, and there's kinds of candidates that aren't open to startups, right? Because they want the big, comfortable brand name, I guess, if you will, right? Tell me a little bit about that, like in terms of the folks that are risk averse to it, but let's say, for instance, they have all the other skills, right? Are you someone who can say, I understand that, but here's something that you might not be thinking about when it comes to a startup risk versus a larger company risk?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I secretly am getting all of my college friends and such into tech and into startups. So I have a buddy that's at All Day Kitchens and a buddy that's at Iterable. And and they don't realize it. I'm like, I think this is like secretly because I've subconsciously been telling them about startups and such, right? And they came from, bigger companies like GE and like a modern governance company, right? Who maybe they were tech-ish and they were doing things forward, but totally different environment at a Iterable or an All Day Kitchens, right? And so what is great is because they're coming in now, it's getting even more folks into, oh wait, I can do this too, right? Even my best friend, he was doing recruiting in the tech industry, but not for like a, let's call it sexy or tech company, right? And now he's doing recruiting at a startup for tech roles and such, and he realized how it's so different, right? And sees how much impact that it can have immediately, right? I believe within the first 6 months, he went from being like recruiter for certain type of roles to now they want them to head DEI initiatives and such. So that's again the impact that you can have by coming into startups, where a large corporation, you can't do that unless you've been there for 10 plus years.
Yeah, and there's always the risk assessment, right? What I always say is that some of the large companies, you talk about impact and opportunity. One of the things is that a larger company is that because your impact is less, because just by sheer nature and numbers, then your contribution is seen as less, and as a result of that, you could be cut or lose your job just as easily as a company who may lose funding or
right. And shoot, if they get on LinkedIn, they'll see when people put X LinkedIn, X Google, X whatever, they get hired like that.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. That's true. You're right. Well, let me ask you this: how do you handle, because I've been in multiple startups that are you were 8th employee here or whatever it is, 9. How do you handle the pressure of having to make that impact, right? And sort of and manage it? Like, what's your perspective and what's your mindset coming into an opportunity where your impact really does matter, and if you don't do a good job and bring it to $1 million, you're not going to be there anymore?
Yeah, I think going into it as an opportunity, right? I don't go into any situation, let's say, scared or ill prepared. Mm-hmm. So it goes back to what is it? Proper preparation makes perfection, or what have you. Yep. And so I'm one of those people that I try to be as proactive as possible with things. So for example, right, I want to bring in additional training for SDRs so we can make sure that not by the end of the year, but through the end of the year, not only are they killing it, but getting upskilled so that beginning of next year, we can hit the ground running even more ferociously.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Makes sense. There's like at least an hour's worth of questions more that I want to ask you, but I know that that's really not realistic. So I'm going to get into the final 5 now with respect to your time and time of our listeners. But at some point, I'd love to have you back on again, because I feel like there's just a lot of ground to cover here for sure. All right, let's get into the final 5. First question is, do you have a philosophy for, just how you prioritize your time? And we talked about time analysis, of course, but more big picture in terms of philosophy. Like, are there any things that you look at from a big time perspective and say, these are the things that I really want to spend most of my time on, these are the things that I'll spend a little bit of my time on, and how do you prioritize them?
Yeah, simply put, things that don't matter, I don't prioritize. Mm-hmm. So it's funny because I always joke with my now fiance, like, why are you stressing over that? Does that matter? and so what I can control is what I prioritize. Mm-hmm. And then I block time off for these things. One of the things that I've learned is blocking time off is great, but keeping your time blocked is the actual cheat code. What I mean by that is a lot of folks will have a time to do this task. Oh, this came up. And then they will move that task. And, that cheat code is, oh no, you just simply put this new task on your calendar later, right? You stay focused on these tasks. So that's one thing. And make something important, you find the time for it. So I don't commit to anything if I don't believe that I can actually put the time in. And then it goes back to focusing for efficiency, right? As I mentioned, I try to do like multiple things at once, right? If me and my girlfriend are even going on like vacation, I'm like, okay, you do this, this, and this. I'll do this, this, and this. We're good, right? And that's just naturally how I am.
Love it. Tell me about a setback and how you overcame it.
Yeah, I kind of mentioned this earlier. I really don't look at anything as a setback, unless I was doing something wrong. Again, going back to, if you are doing the right things, all it is an opportunity or a lesson learned. And I guess a lesson learned is just bandwidth as I build out the team. In my mind, I was like, well, I can do this, 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 and this. In reality, I can't, right? And giving up those Legos of, hey, I actually don't have the bandwidth where I could do, say, enterprise, mid-market, and the SDRs, right? So it makes perfect sense that enterprise works directly with the CEO, for example, right? So giving up Legos like that, or realizing, hey, I can't necessarily onboard 4 people and put a full fire on recruiting at the same time, right? Unless like we had more folks.
Yep.
So it's just like learning bandwidth, and I think that's one of the things that has been powerful for me, because I've always been the type of person who I will just find time, but there's only 24 hours in a day, and sometimes you need 26.
You mentioned, by the way, this is, I guess, off the script a little bit here, but you mentioned when we talked before that you don't sleep really. So how many hours of sleep, I know you have to sleep at some point. How many hours of sleep do you typically get a day or a night, I guess, and why? Why so little, presumably?
Yeah, so I get like 5 to 6 hours typically, and I like to say it's life FOMO. I always feel like I could be doing something. And I could be doing this or I could be doing that. Oh, I could schedule this for tomorrow, for example. So I have life FOMO in that regard, but it's funny because I think when I was back at Yelp or JustWorks or something, one of my coworkers found this article where it says there are a certain percentage of the population that has this unique gene or mutation
Right.
that you like, where typically the normal body needs like 8 hours of sleep. These type of people, me, only need 5 to 6 hours. Now it's really funny. If I get 4 hours of sleep, it's terrible.
Right. Yep.
5 or 6, I'm rolling.
Very interesting. Okay. So usually good sleep will help reduce stress, right? I have my little watch that tells me so oftentimes. How do you, as I alluded to earlier in terms of the stress of a startup, how do you manage stress, or at least prevent it from overcoming you?
Yeah, I mean, before moving to Texas recently, I would say boxing and yoga as part one. And then part two, going back to content consumption. So TV shows, movies, audio books, and previously music as well. That's what I do. And even when I'm doing boxing or yoga, I'll also be watching a show or listening to a book, right? So it goes back to the multitasking of it. So that's how I and let's add in sports as well, because it is fall, which is the best season of all.
Especially in Texas. At least in my opinion, if you're a football fan.
Well, I can't wait till we're going to move to Austin soon. And I guess we're going to be somewhat near, what is it called? Lake Travis High School or Lakewood or something like that.
Right. Yes,
and they're supposed to be like really good. I was like, oh, we're going to a game.
That's right. It's interesting, by the way, that you box and yoga. Talk about yin and yang, right? The opposite ends of the spectrum there. I'm a yogi, I'll say. I've been doing yoga for like the last 3 years, and or maybe even longer, frankly, at that point. How often do you do yoga?
Well, again, once we moved and such, I haven't, but previously I was doing it at least twice a week. And then I even, because I was passionate about boxing and yoga, I found literally like boxing yoga. And so what was it called? It was called Box and Flow. It was based in New York. The pandemic, hurt them like it has hurt a lot of gyms, but she did a lot of online stuff and I was loving it. I think I was even paying like $30 a month or something. And what it was like boxing and HIIT workout for 30 minutes. And then it was a yoga cool down for 15 minutes. It was amazing.
That sounds like a lot of fun for sure. Man, I wish they had something here in Boston like that. Box Flow. Woo, that's great. I wonder if they'll expand after this whole thing, I guess. All right, 2 more questions. Question number 4. What do you want to get better at right now?
Professionally or personally?
That's a good question. I'll let you choose.
Okay, I'll just do both. Professionally, the RevOps side of things, and really being able to be data driven but people informed. I used to be one of those people who's like, forget the data, this is what's happening. But at the same time, it's both, right? It's not that only listen to the data, it's let's listen to the data, but let's also listen to what we're hearing as well, right? Let's let those inform one another. And so really leveling up there. And that's why I did RevOps school with Pavilion, with Jocko and Winning by Design, which was really awesome. And may even do like a round 2 of it because it's just, always great to get better at these things.
Mhm.
And then personally, patience. I'm a very impatient individual, but it's because I try to be very efficient. So those don't always work together.
No, I don't think that they do. I don't think that they do. Maybe add some meditation after that yoga. All right, fantastic. And actually, two final questions because the last one is going to be for people to get in touch with you. But number 5, what are you most excited about right now, personally and professionally?
Well, personally, I alluded to earlier, I just moved from Brooklyn to Texas. So, well, let me bring that back. I had a going away party and I surprised my girlfriend by proposing. So now I have a whole fiance, if you will. So we are in Texas in Houston for a month at my in-laws, I guess, our future in-laws. And then we're moving into our spot in Austin December 6th. And got a car already. I'm like adulting on 1,000 right now. And then professionally, just to continue and grow and make an impact on my team here at Ethena, and have them level up and going back to the triple stuff. But also to continue making a greater impact within the sales community and folks that look like me. And so I think another one that's kind of personal and professional is this Saturday. I'm part of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, Gamma Iota Lambda chapter in Brooklyn. I'm the director of education. And what that means is we have an Alpha Academy, which is basically our kind of junior mentorship group. Again, going back to impact and feeding into the community. And this week's session is actually going to be geared around tech and entrepreneurs. So if you're free Saturday, happy to have you join. But I have actually some of the folks that I mentioned earlier that have gotten into tech recently. They're going to be speaking, and then some entrepreneurs, both a friend from college, also a fraternity brother, and also a young woman, and then a gentleman in our chapter in Brooklyn. So again, more ways to just try to feed back into the community.
That is fantastic. What time on Saturday?
Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern. It'll be 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. And I see you got a lot of books there. The session will be kind of 2 panels, a entrepreneur panel for 30, 40 minutes, then a tech panel for 30 or 40 minutes. And then we'll wrap it up with a 20-minute book club around Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me, which I have the young men reading.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I was hopeful maybe that I could join, but I've got some swim class and a zoo that we're going to on Saturday.
No worries.
I don't think that's going to work.
No worries.
So let me ask you, how can people get in touch with you to learn more, ask questions that I neglected to get to, apply, frankly, at Ethena? Give me a sense of where people can find you.
Yeah, so professionally, Dwight at goethena.com. Or find me on LinkedIn. I believe my LinkedIn is literally Dwight Lawson. And then personally, email is dlawson1988@gmail.com. And simply put, you can find me on Slack, probably within several communities from either Pavilion, Black in Tech, Sassly, Rev Genius, Us in Tech, and so on and so forth.
Fantastic. Dwight Lawson, thank you for going over quota.
Appreciate it.
Bye, everybody. Cue the music.